Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for clicking on this Smashy Smashy Eggman movie reviews and more. So we finished talking about When Animals Attack, those movies where, well, animals start killing people. We spent 2 months talking about them, and now for this month, November, I decided to switch gears and talk about, some classics. Not necessarily classic movies, but a classic bard. That's right, over the next, for the month of November, there are 5 weeks in November, I'll be talking about the works of William Shakespeare, or works inspired by the works of Shakespeare. So that's what I'm going to be talking about for the next 5 weeks. I've decided to do some Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare, I'm a thespian, so it's time to Shaky the Spear. That was bad. That was real bad. Bad, Barton. Bad. Alright, to start things up, I'll do one of his absolute classics. This version might not be the most classic, but, you know what, it's a fun version anyways, and that is, William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, as the titular Romeo and his Juliet. This is obviously based on the very famous play, Romeo and Juliet. Basically, if you don't know what this play is, I'm surprised. This is one of the most famous works of Shakespeare. It might be the most famous. If you're a theater person, Hamlet is often thrown into that mix, but I think in the general audience, Romeo and Juliet might be the most well-known. You have Romeo, who is a Capulet, and Juliet, who is a Montague. You know what? Those are backwards. Those are backwards. Juliet's a Capulet, and I honestly, how can I not remember who is who? I don't know why. I think the back of the box is going to tell me who's who. You know what? When all else fails, turn to the text. You don't keep a complete works of William Shakespeare sitting on your desk and not use it. I don't know why I grabbed... Oh, cool, I'm right. Oh, man, I almost... Second try got me straight to Romeo and Juliet. Yes, thank you. Romeo, son of Montague. So Romeo's a Montague, Juliet is a Capulet. Alright, now that I've got the houses correct, in this film, well, in this story, you have, they're from two different houses who are feuding. Eventually, Romeo and Juliet find each other. They fall madly in love with each other. But unfortunately, their houses are feuding. They can't be together. So they decide to secretly get married. And with that secret marriage comes its own problems. Because the day they get married... Oh yeah, spoiler alerts if you've never seen any version of Romeo and Juliet. On the day of their marriage, Romeo gets into a fight with Juliet's cousin, the King of Cats, Tybalt, after he has slain Romeo's best friend, Mercutio. Romeo then goes out for vengeance and slays Tybalt, which now makes Romeo a wanted man. Him and Juliet's love, they cannot be together now no matter what because of what Romeo has done. Romeo flees and Juliet conspires with a friar to allow herself to flee as well, to go be with her Romeo, and she flees by pretending to kill herself because she's engaged to be wed to a businessman named Paris, and she flees, and, well, she doesn't flee, she decides to take a potion that'll make it look like she is dead, so she'll be buried in the Capulet monument where Romeo can then collect the body. Unfortunately, the news does not reach Romeo in time, and he is forced to believe that Juliet is just dead. Upon murdering Paris, which actually isn't in this version, but he definitely murders Paris. I am almost certain he murders Paris. After murdering Paris, he finds Juliet dead and stabs himself. Or no, he takes poison. Juliet uses his dagger to stab herself, and they are both dead. Because the difference in Shakespeare between comedy and tragedy is simply, are their bodies at the end of the show? So, although a lot of Romeo and Juliet might have been considered a comedy, just because they both die at the end, it is tragedy. Now, let's stop talking about Romeo and Juliet as a whole, and let's talk about this version of Romeo and Juliet, directed by Baz Luhrmann, who I know I just butchered his last name. He decided to do a modern telling of the story. Nobody uses swords. They use guns that are named after swords. Like, one character pulls out the rapier. And honestly, as dumb as it is, it's super clever. It's a very stylized version, too, with everything that happens. But the entire show is there in this movie. Obviously, there are bits cut off for time and pacing, because that's just what you have to do with Shakespeare. Very rarely do you get the complete work on stage or in film, unless you're talking purists or some Kenneth Branagh, which we'll get to some Kenneth Branagh. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be doing Kenneth Branagh films, because he is great. He is great at Shakespeare, and I want to talk me some Kenneth Branagh. But that's the next 2 weeks. And then we'll do Shakespeare influenced for the last 2 weeks. Getting back to Romeo and Juliet. So it's this really stylized piece, and it's taking place instead of Verona. Verona's been turned kind of into like Venice Beach. It is a really interesting way of doing it. It's an interesting way of storytelling. I think it works. I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's a fun movie. I think it's one you watch and you kind of just enjoy. It's not one you go, man, that was great Shakespeare. I think you just go, man, that was fun Shakespeare. And again, it embraced an audience for what Romeo and Juliet is. It is the last major adaptation. There have been other film adaptations since this one came out, but none of them reached the heights that this one got to. I mean, again, you have Leo DiCaprio, you have Claire Danes, you have John Leguizamo as Tybalt in this movie, a bunch of other actors. Michael Rappaport plays one of the Montagues. Michael Rappaport from Deep Blue Sea, who I mentioned was a much bigger name when Deep Blue Sea came out. This was part of it. This was part of the reason why he was such a bigger name when Deep Blue Sea came out, is because he was in this. He was being recognized for these kinds of roles in these kind of movies. Also, Jamie Kennedy has a very blink and you'll miss it role. Harold Pineur from Oz and Lost, and he's done a bunch of other roles. He's a great actor. He plays Mercutio. It is a very well done cast, and they're doing the Shakespeare justice. It's just the Baz Luhrmann style gets mixed in there, and it just kind of gets really big real fast. But it is a fun version of Romeo and Juliet. It's an interesting version. It's entertaining, to say the least. Again, it's not great Shakespeare, but it's entertaining Shakespeare. And you know, at some point, that's all you need. All you need is your Shakespeare just to be entertaining. Just to get the point across that this is something so much different than everything else. And the fact that they still use the language, that although they modernized the setting, they didn't modernize the language, which I know throws a lot of people off, is the language. But again, it's a simple story of two people who fall in love, who find out they can't be in love, they can't be together, so they try to defy everyone and be together just to fail miserably. It's a great story. I enjoy Romeo and Juliet. It's not my favorite Shakespeare play. I just like ranking up there. This is just it's a classic story. It is one of the most classic Shakespeare, and I felt like I needed to cover a version of it if I'm talking Shakespeare. Some of my favorite Shakespeare, we're gonna cover over the next 2 weeks my two favorite Shakespearean plays. Which, if nothing, did this as a reason to rewatch both of these. I might even do some comparison. I haven't decided yet if I'm gonna do some comparison of versions. But there's Shakespeare's got a lot of great plays. Not all of them translate into great movies. A lot of them do. A lot of them have really decent adaptations out there. If you can find them, if you can find the right adaptations. But this is a good adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. It does the work justice, and it's a really interesting style. And, at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. It's an interesting style and a really cool way of doing Romeo and Juliet. So yeah, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. This was released in I want to say 97. 96. This was released in 96. It's a fun film. It is a fun time. Check it out if you've never seen it before. If you're interested in some Shakespeare and some Romeo and Juliet, come back next week to talk a little more Shakespeare. Again, I might be comparing and contrasting some versions of Shakespearean films over the next 2 weeks. I might not. It all depends on what I decide to do. And don't forget, the last 2 weeks of this month, I won't be doing straight Shakespeare. I'll be doing works inspired by Shakespeare. So tune in for that. Like, comment, subscribe so you don't miss anything. I am Martin Prevost. This is Smashy Smashy Eggman, movie reviews and more. And I will catch you in 7 days. Have a good one.